Hello, I am Jamila McMallow, mindset coach and relationship expert for high performing women. I'm here with my amazing client, Ashley Cook. She's an entrepreneur who is also in corporate management and leadership. And it has been my wonderful pleasure and privilege to work with Ashley. At this point, it's been a year, not necessarily continuous, but we split it up in like two different sections. And so, just to give those watching a little bit of background, the first time Ashley and I worked together, she was a newlywed and just wanted to heal some things from her past so that she didn't bring that forward into her new relationship. And that is going amazingly well. We were able to do that deep work. But then, of course, life happened. And so Ashley and I started working together again. And so we're going to be talking about that today. So, Ashley, how are you doing?
I'm good, Jamila. Thanks for having me back on as a second round. Couldn't get enough of you the first time.
Yes. So why don't you just kind of talk a little bit about why we started working together this time? What were some of the challenges that happened when life happened?
So like you had mentioned, the first time, that we started working together, we really went into, I was a newlywed, and I was also finding that all of my success, things that made me successful in corporate, were crushing me as an entrepreneur. Turns out they're unhealed child wounds. I had no idea. I was like, why am I dying? And why am I crushing under perfectionism, and nothing's ever good enough in my eyes, like for my own stand. I'm always falling short and focused, and all that stuff. And so, we worked together and did such some amazing work with that. And life was going great. And then last spring happened, which, when you mentioned life happens, sometimes things happen in our life that you don't see coming, and it jolts you off track, and not just jolts you, it like jolts you, knocks you over, and then like stomps you. And that's what happened last spring. My husband and I found out we were pregnant. 10 weeks later, I lost the pregnancy, and it was my first time being pregnant, first time going through losing a baby. And I found that everything just imploded on me. And it was change and loss of identity. It was obviously the grieving of the lost pregnancy, the baby, all the hopes and the dreams that happen when you see those two blue lines, the impact of that on the marriage, the impact of that of being an entrepreneur, and trying to grow a business while you were trying to grow life. And then so there's all these triggers everywhere. The implosion of my faith as I knew it up to that point. It was just a destruction at a level I had not experienced. And I don't say that lightly or even hyperbolically. And so, I went through all the things that I knew to do, right? Like I went through grief counseling, and I journaled, and I breathed, and I took space, and I did, like all the things that I knew up to that point to do. And there was a point where I could feel like I wasn't making headway anymore. And I started to feel things were sludge, and like I'd started to get like my feet out from underneath me, but I was still stumbling in my business and thinking about returning to corporate, but I was really beating myself up for that, because I was like, I have all this pressure on me to heal, be a great wife, grow a business, like physically heal and emotionally heal, so we can talk about trying again, and somehow have trust in God and lean not on your own understanding and all that stuff. So it was so much pressure on me. And it was towards the tail end of last year. And I remember it very clearly. I was sitting in my car. I had just finished yoga, and I sat in my car, and it was raining outside, and I just felt heavy even after yoga. Like usually stretching and getting out of the house like helps. Moving clears my mind. I just felt heavy. And I had a message. I sent you a message, I think, before the class. And when I got out, you had sent me a message back, and we were just talking at that point. And I was like, I can't, something's got to give. And I'm on a break. I'm at a break point. And I remember sitting in the car, listening to your message. And it was really the first time that I felt like someone heard and listened at the level that I needed to. Like my grief counselor was there, and my husband was there, like they're there, they're supportive, they want you better, but but it's different. It was different with you. Cause like you can keep up with me and like, when I'm trying to like convince you of something and you're like, no, Ashley. And you also hear the things that I'm not saying. And I think it was in that message where you were like, Ashley, if you choose to return to court, like you were validating that it wasn't a fail. Like, any of these decisions that I'm anguishing over are not a result of me failing at something.
Right. Exactly.
So I was at such a low point that at the end of the year that I was like, Jamila, like you were my lifeline that got me, like that pulled me out of a very dark and hard place.
Yes. And I'll just say that I remember that conversation too. And I remember because when I'm listening to you, I'm like, and you're telling me, I'm like, if you need to go do that, do that. You do need to do that. In fact, because you do need a break. Here's the facts. Being an entrepreneur, you are your business. And when we're going through things like the loss of a child and things that are very heavy and big, we don't have the bandwidth to be doing all that and trying to show up on social media and be this and be that. It's like, you need to go somewhere where you're going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. And it's no shame in that, because in case you all didn't know, which you don't, Ashley's brilliant. She had a very successful corporate career prior to becoming an entrepreneur. And so she has always, made great money, had great positions, done a lot of big things. And so it was no big deal for her to just go back to that. She already knew how to do it and what to do. But what it did was it also allowed her to get focused on something that she could control. Because I know you mentioned when we were talking before that this season of life or that year, it felt like now things were happening that were like out of your control. And so that was one of the first things I wanted to make sure I did, was help you to get out of that state of feeling like life was happening to you and where you were back in control. Okay. And so once she was like, okay, I'm going back to corporate. And then it was like, boom, what was it, like a week or two before you had it?
It was so weird. It was like, as soon as I just whispered, I think I want to return to corporate. It was like 2 jobs, just like right there. And I know that doesn't happen for everybody. And I recognize like the specialness of that. And maybe the normalcy of it. I don't know I just recognize it for what it is. And it was the gift that I needed in that moment. And within like a breath, I had a job.
Yes.
And that was it was a significant pressure to get off of me. And I think what you helped me do is to reframe it, that returning to corporate was a gift for myself, for my healing. And that was really, that was the part that I was like, oh, well, I can do that. Like, and sometimes it just takes shifting, like how you see a decision that I'd been anguishing over. Cause it's like, you are your business is like, you create it. Like it's something that you created, and to walk away from that is, or to put it on a shelf. I now say like it's in a medically induced coma / cryogenically frozen. So it's kind of like, it's still there, and I still have that entrepreneurial spirit. And it's also been nice to get the pressure of, of income, of just getting all the decisions, starting to clear the table of decisions I needed off my plate so I could focus on my healing. And that's ultimately what, that was like really the first big shift that you helped me with. And that was before I even like signed the dotted line. So
that was just in the memos, we were going back and forth. And I think it's important to note too, that what we're not saying is that working in corporate does not require mental effort. It does. But what Ashley gets to do is to just show up and do her job. She gets to just stay in her zone of genius versus zone of genius plus sales, plus marketing, plus accounting, plus admin, which is what you do when you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur. And even if you have a VA or whatever, you still wear a lot of hats as an entrepreneur.
I needed to take off some dang hats.
Yes. And listen, and she grew a 6-figure business in a very short span of time. So it wasn't like, oh, she wasn't making things happen. She was, but she was doing all the things. And so it was like, this is too much. And so I just say that because I don't want people to think that oh, when you go back to a job, not only is it not a failure, but it's also not an indication that you somehow are doing anything that's less than, because I know for a fact that your job you're doing now is very challenging, but you don't have to worry about any of the things that are going on except for what is pertinent to your job. And when
And at
we
the end
are,
of the day, I can log out and shut my computer down. I can take a vacation, get paid for it. There are things that the benefits that it's affording me right now are things that are really helpful for my well-being. Granted, there's also the big hot mess of stress that comes with, corporate and all their chaos and all their shenanigans.
Mhm.
And that also gives me the opportunity to use the tools in my toolkit to, that you and I worked on, that I've worked on with, I have a practitioner I'm working with. I assembled like a team, a very high caliber
Yep.
team around me. And it was the most significant investment I've ever made in myself around my healing. And you were an incredibly instrumental part of that. You led the way in that team.
Thank you.
You were like the first, and I was like, okay, now I need to get, like the body work. So, I'm working with an amazing, wonderful practitioner there. And then, so it's to hit at all fronts. And that honestly has helped to set me up to make the transition back into corporate. Because that was something else that we talked about, because we were messaging before I returned, is, how do I actually make and execute this transition? How do I get through that, knowing that I'm in this really difficult place? So you
Yeah.
help with that, getting stabilized back into the workforce.
Yes, because that actually brings up, so you started your business because your last corporate experience, it didn't end on a good note. It was kind of like you were trying to get away, really escaping a very toxic work environment. Who leaves a toxic work environment and then goes build a six-figure company? Only Ashley. Well, not only Ashley, but the point
It's
is
a
that,
motivator.
but so there, but here's the thing: when you leave a toxic work environment, and you're like, okay, I want to go back, but I'm scared that could happen again. And I don't want to get burnt out or beat down like I did before. And so I was able to help you see, number one, you're not the same person. One of the things about being an entrepreneur is you jump feet first into this whole personal development world. And if nothing else, you learn how to manage you, and you learn how to work through your emotions and your feelings and your beliefs. So the version of you that left that environment doesn't even exist anymore. So
100%.
yeah, so you're different. And so you're coming from a different place. And, you're also choosing, to go back, and you have now this whole breadth of knowledge that you've learned, from being an entrepreneur. And so what I love about this part, like when we first started and we did all of this, is that it really took you from, like I said, feeling almost like I don't want to use the word victim, but feeling like this, to getting you into an empowered state. Like I said, control, but really it's a sense of feeling empowered, like you're back, like, whoo, thank you. Like, oh, and not saying that the healing stuff, we didn't have some very serious things to face, but I knew she's got to get her strength back first,
Yeah.
and get your footing there. And I would say that the transition that you've made back to corporate has been, yeah, it's stressful and all those things, but it's not like it's not like what you thought it was going to be or what you were worried about or any of that.
And I will
And
tell you, I am so much better at what I do now, like, and how I show up and who I am when I show up than I've ever been in corporate before. And I've spoken to, our senior leadership, our C-suite executives, and have said, like I was just on a call with one yesterday, and I was like, and I said, I don't believe that there's enough transparency and honesty or candid speaking in corporate. And I gave some very open feedback on opportunities that I could see where they could improve. And the previous Ashley would have never done that. I would have bent and broken and shaped myself into whatever box because I need to be grateful for a job, that kind of thing. This, I can't, after you build a business and then you transition into a corporate setting, like, you're kind of like a superwoman in some ways, because you come in and you're like, I have nothing to lose. I can be completely me. I can be completely authentically me. I feel like I'm a stronger leader. I am a stronger, more strategic thinker. I'm, could I come in and just execute, close down and leave. Yeah, but like, I don't want to do that. I'm applying all these really great things that I learned from entrepreneurship into this setting. And I think what you helped me do is because I did have a lot of concerns around, and I think this applies to any, like, of your clients or anyone watching who's going through or facing a transition, and transition creates uncertainty because of the unknown, right?
Yep.
And I think what you helped me do, I know what you helped me do, is really to go into that transition in a state of empowerment, and to remember that I'm not the same person, and to you help equip me with the tools to stay in that empowered state. Because I was afraid of like falling back, of slipping back. And it was a valid fear that never panned out.
Mm,
and I think
love
you
that.
really helped me to ground in that.
Yes. Ashley, you're not coming in and out of it. It's, this is me.
Yeah.
At any and all times. And so after we kind of work through this, you're now working your job, you've made that transition, you're in an empowered state, you've got your strength back. Now, finally, it came time to really face, I don't want to say face the music because it wasn't, but to face what really was like swirling, just going around and around. And I think one of the things that we do, as women, as men may probably do this too, but we act like if we don't acknowledge the feeling or the thought, that is like what we should just keep trying to convince ourselves not to think that way. And it's like, listen, you already think it. You already feel it. It ain't going away. You need to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And once you acknowledge it and face it, you release it. It loses its power. It no longer has any relevance or hold on you or your life. But we get stuck in that loop when we don't just say the thing that we already feel, but feel like we shouldn't say that. You're not saying it to anybody. You're not going out posting it online. You just need to say it to yourself, and of course we're doing this, working together. So it's like, I'm telling you, okay, this is how you want to navigate this, but you had to eventually come to terms with all of those things and give yourself permission to speak the truth of your feelings, no matter how ugly, judgmental, inappropriate, whatever, because just acknowledging that was the release.
Yes.
And so why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, so one of the things that we worked on was, that really came to a head from the pregnancy loss, or out of that, was, the hurt, or there was a lot of feelings around it: hurt, fear, embarrassment, terror, questions, disillusionment, frustration, all these emotions around, when I had the pregnancy loss. I found that instead of, the comfort of what I would normally have experienced in my faith, I was instead met with fear and terror. And it was really embarrassing for me, because I've spent my life in the church. I've gone to seminary. I've been on leadership teams. I've done, been involved, and my faith has been so important to me from teenage years on up. To find myself in a place where I didn't, and it took me working with you to put words to it, of I no longer knew how to find God, and the church was no longer a safe place for me to go to for that. And there's a whole mountain of stuff behind those two sentences that you helped me to realize. And I think the big shift for me that happened with that, because we hit at a lot of different things, and it's like, there's still stuff in there, but like everything that we did and everything we released helped to get to closer and closer to the root. Mm-hmm. And so the root of it was, I remember you telling me, Ashley, you're controlling your grief. And I was like, how dare you? Like, I was like, of course I'm controlling my grief, and how dare you, and you had tasked me with, at homework from that session, was to have time to basically, in a safe space, because I gotten to a point where now I was safe to do this, right? I was emotionally like stabilized and safe to do this, to to be able to let the grief and the chaos of it have its way with me and to get it out. And I was sitting right there on the floor. And I did. And it took me a few days. I had to we were pep talking me up to, not pep talking, but I was priming myself for it. I waited till my husband went on a work trip, and I got all my tools around me, and my tools being really loud, like heavy metal music from my high school years. It's like System of a Down, Linkin Park. Like that's not really super heavy, but loud enough to where if I was going to scream, the neighbors wouldn't call the police because I didn't want interruption and I'd not alarm them. And then it was getting myself into that state where I don't want to say trigger myself, but I don't know if a better word for that is to get myself into that state to where I could start getting that emotion out of me. And you were on standby, I know, in case I needed to message you. That's one of the best, one of the biggest perks of working with you is that Voxer, that support that you provide. And I use
because I want to say we were in that conversation where a memory came up, a moment came up for you.
Yeah. So in that what got me into it was I went back through and I read the text message I sent to a good friend of mine when I was going to the hospital, and after we found out about the miscarriage, and I was texting her, and I had said the comment of, I had been reading that week up to it. I was reading children's books, and the part that hit me was something like, and I don't know if my baby heard me read them a bedtime story. And that there was something in that moment that just unleashed it. And it was a very raw, very difficult, very expressive time. And these are all very cleaned up ways of explaining what happened. But I was able to, in that moment, put words to things that I had always been too afraid of, because people in the church would say, you can't say that, you can't do this, you can't go that, you can't question here. And it all came out, and things that would probably get me, I know for sure would get me kicked out of most churches, it had to come out of me. And I think that's the thing, is it's already in you. You've already thought it. You just haven't, you're holding on to it. And so that exercise was really I've got to get this shifted out of my body if I'm going to heal from it. And I know, I think you call yourself a mindset coach, but and it's true. There is that. And one of the powerful things about working with you is that you recognize that it also has to shift out of your body. And so you have the exercises to help move this junk out of you. Yes. And that was really that moment was really very powerful, and really helped to help clear the skies.
Yes. And I remember when we had our session after that, and you were talking about an experience that you had when you ran into a friend or someone, and they mentioned something about their church. And when you were in that phase of hurting, you would have reacted maybe in a different way. But this time you're like, oh, it's not for me, or, or whatever it was that you said, but you didn't, you looked at her and you said, but that's nice that, she has something that she holds on to. And
it was the neighbor a few houses down. That's how I knew I was healed. And you actually were the one who pointed it out to me, because they had invited me to go to their church, and I was telling Kurt about it, and my husband, and I was like, they're just proud of where they go to church and they just want to share it. And I told that to you, and you were like, Ashley, do you know what you just did? And I was like, no. It just do some healing.
It just rolled right. It was like nothing. There was no animosity. There was no frustration. There was no, how dare you? Because let's take it back 3 days prior, to that exercise and you processing through those few days. Perhaps last week, if she had done that, she'd have got a different response, because, the truth is, you had that grief and not understanding and confusion and anger, really, because like you said, you wanted answers and all these things, but those feelings, those thoughts, those had to be expressed. And that's what allowed you to get to the other side. And what was keeping you from facing it was this fear that you were somehow wrong for just acknowledging it. It doesn't mean that you believe it in the sense that I am gonna, say something blasphemous, or I'm gonna do this. No, you're not, because that's not how you really don't feel that way. You know what I'm saying? In the sense that No, you do believe in God. You do love him. You're just angry about the fact that you lost a child and you don't understand. And that's just how you do you understand what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah, it's putting words to the emotion to get the emotion out of you.
yes.
And it's not always it's not where, like, because I don't have that in me anymore. And so that is a really strong indicator of that, is that what I said on the floor in my bedroom was not um it's not a true belief.
Right.
It's the words that needed to hitch up to the emotion to get out of me.
Yes. And so we waste so much time judging ourselves. And what we do is we judge ourselves for feeling the feelings rather than just allowing ourselves to acknowledge the feelings so that they can release and go on about their business and we can be free of it and truly heal and move forward. And so I just want to
It
tell
takes
you, and
someone after, not after, it takes someone, like, you can't DIY that. I'm sure you can, like, I mean, I don't want to put, like, say it's impossible, but like, to really do it justice and to not like piddle with it, like to actually get it done and do so on without spending years cesspooling around it, it takes someone outside of yourself. Like, I could not have made the progress that I have made, the healing that I have done, I've gone through, the deep shifts that get to the root, that just kind of dissolve anything that root's attached to. I couldn't have done that on my own in the time that we worked together. I couldn't have seen that in me,
mm-hmm.
And that's what I love about working with you, and why I signed up to do it a second time, is you work with smart, sharp women who could probably run circles around many of their therapists. And whenever they're saying something, because you've called it on me before, like, where you're like, Ashley, you get an A+ in awareness, but you haven't, like, you got to shift this out of you, and
Mm-hmm.
and you have a direct style that is compassionate and very clear and articulate. So, like, you don't mess around. And you also you have a good read on how a person can, like, what a person is capable of. So if we would have done that church stuff, like, at the very beginning, like, you had an order to it that I couldn't see, because I was just caked in mud, sitting on the dirt floor. Like, and you could see beyond, like, hey, how do we get her on her feet? How do we get her showered off? How do we get her, like, walking out the door? And that's why I think what is so powerful about working, doing this kind of deep work
Mm-hmm.
with someone that's not DIY.
Right. Yep. And I love that you brought that up, because I think some people think, oh, I've healed, I did some journaling, I read a book. And the truth of the matter is, because even I have, my coach that I work with that helps me work through my emotional blocks, because the fact is we cannot get past our own resistance, and we can't see what we can't see. Like you said, it takes someone outside of you, because sometimes we'll be so focused on what we think the real issue is when it's actually something over here, because our mind is really good at keeping us focused on what it doesn't want us to be focused on. Whatever's painful, whatever the real truth is, it will have us thinking about something else. And me being on the outside, I'm not living in your story. I'm like, actually, it's that thing over there. And if we attack that, all this other stuff goes away. So let's go after that.
What is that saying, that it's like the fish can't see the water, or I've heard the ketchup can't see the bottle, which I personally love, because I do like ketchup. But it's this truth, like, you can't, like, you can only see and heal, like, what you can only heal what you can see, and it mean you may very well be spinning your wheels on a symptom and not going to the cause, which I would argue is not actually the true deep healing.
Yes. Yep. Awareness is not healing. And healing doesn't come until you experience the release. The healing comes after the release. So the awareness is step one. Okay, this is the problem, but then you got to release the stories, beliefs, emotions attached to that. And now you can heal, because all that stuff is gone. I love to use this example when I'm doing my trainings and things about, having a knife in your arm, and how people go through life trying to protect their wounds, their emotional wounds. And they might have an awareness that there's a knife sticking out of their arm, and they're being careful about not bumping into people and, learning new ways to navigate around objects, when it's like, and I'm like, well, guess what? Why don't you just take it out, and then you're done with, and then the knife's gone. So now the wound has been exposed. We're going to put some medication on it, put a bandage on it, and now you can heal. Because as long as it's still there, it's an open wound. You're just trying to protect it, and you can't even see anything other than trying to protect yourself. But once that's gone and you start to heal, then life literally changes. You can see things you couldn't see before because you're no longer in pain. You're no longer trying to protect a wound, but the wound can't heal until you get rid of what's causing it. And that's not, and being aware of it doesn't get rid of the problem. So
well, that was my biggest realization, is like, because I like to, like, if you ask me all my strengths finders, my top ones are like where I love to collect information. I love to ask questions. I love to gather information. And it's like my biggest shift that will forever alter my life was the realization that awareness is not healing. And that I needed more than just mind talk. Like, I needed more than understanding what was going on. And now I'm like, do I even need to understand? Can I release it without understanding? Okay, let's do this. I've released the desire to even to just camp out in the awareness or the understanding. Because, which is a total 180 from where I was like before we started working together, where I was like, Jamila, let me tell you all the things I'm aware of. And you're like, that's nice. Okay, we're going to focus on the actual healing part. I'd grown up, I'd been in therapy or counseling, off and on throughout, my teens and 20s. And even the grief counseling I was doing, it all stayed up here. And that's where I think the work with you is so powerful, is one, you get out of here, you stay in here long enough for it to be beneficial. And then you start shifting and doing the healing work that comes after that, or happens, it can maybe in tandem with it. And you do so because you have this expert, you're like a,
you said a bloodhound.
I was going to say bloodhound. And I'm like, maybe I don't want to say that because I don't want to compare you to a dog, but I've said Mia as a bloodhound too in different ways, but you're like a bloodhound for the trauma that needs to be healed. And you just know how to sniff it out and to get to the root and the crux of it. And it's just a skill that out of the different coaches and or counselors that I've worked with, it's unmatched. It's just unmatched. Period.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So why don't you share, if we haven't already highlighted it, if there's anything else, what other takeaways or breakthroughs or results have you gotten from us working together this time?
I think that one of the beautiful things about working with you is you are about it's the healing, and it's also the empowerment, and realizing that we have the freedom and the ability that exists within us to design the life and relationships that we want, right? And those can become the work that we do, the books that we read, the practices that we do, they can help me to see that they can be tools to help me, not the people aren't tools, but corporate, for example, returning to corporate was when you helped me shift my belief around returning to corporate, and how that was a gift to my healing. You equipped me with different tools and exercises that I could lean on to and start practicing to get my mindset game on point. And start shifting things in multitudes of the life. So I think what I loved about working with you is that the exercises that you do aren't just isolated. They only help in one area. They're interconnected. And I know I'm rambling a bit on it because there's so many.
You're not rambling.
I'm not rambling. That's something I'm not rambling. I'm elaborating.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's shifting into that truly empowered state, and and realizing that we are more empowered than we give ourselves credit for. And you helped me to see that within myself.
Well,
and how to walk in it.
And that, just hearing you say that, it just makes me feel humbled. And, just, this is such a privilege to do what I do. Because to see someone suffering, going through the emotional place where you were, and for me to just be able to see exactly how to walk you through that, and for you to be on the other side and doing so well, it's like, absolutely love what I do. And it's just because, wow, it's like you have this ability to help someone get through something that you don't have to suffer in that way anymore. If that's a way for me to express it, it just, like I said, it's humbling, it's flooring to me, because it's like, who am I that I'm able to help women like Ashley and like my other clients to do something so tremendous, with their lives. And it's just been just a blessing, and a privilege to work with you, because you were committed to the process, from day one, both times, even when we worked together the first time, and because you were committed, you did what I asked you to do. You leaned
You
on me.
avoided it for like 2 days, but I came around.
Right. I'm going to come tap it like, wait a minute now.
Yeah. Resistance will not hang around, is not an excuse. No.
No, it's not. And and you stayed connected with me on Viber. Like you said, I know some people use Vox, but I use Viber. But we stayed connected on there. And
Viber, yeah.
And I love that, like you said, because I love to stay connected with my clients, because I want you to feel supported, at all times. And so much of
the
what
moment, like that's the magic of like the Viber connection is, like, it's just the sessions are wonderful. And I found that so much because like you just like take notes until like, oh, I need to talk to Jamila about, I'm in the moment, I'm in the heat of the moment, but I'm going to take notes until my session with her in 13 days. Like it's I didn't have to worry about that. I could just send you a voice note and knew that you would be very responsive.
Yes. So Ashley,
yes, I would 1,000%. I won't even let you ask the question. Yeah. If I would say that if you are
so much, I just have to pause you right there. Oh my goodness.
Sorry, go ahead and ask the question. Okay.
No, you can go ahead. I just had to.
Yes, I would absolutely recommend Jamila. I have done 2 different whatever that's called,
time frames, I guess you could say.
Different time frames. Yeah, I've come back for 2 different types of healing. And I would say 100%. I would say if you are a I was going to start elaborating again. I would, to keep it concise, I would say yes. I would for sure recommend working with you. I would say if you know what? No, I don't have any. Yes, it was just a yes.
Yes. So if they were on the fence, how would you push them over?
If I was on the fence,
if they were on the fence, what would you say? Yeah,
I would say, so your healing takes time, but it doesn't take forever. And I think for me, it was, how long do I want to suffer? And I would ask, like, how long do you want to suffer? How long do you want to try to figure this out on your own? For me, my time, like, I don't want to hurt longer than I need to. I don't want to stay in grief or in confusion or frustration or any of those feelings for longer than I have to. So it's really the choice of how long do you want to suffer? That was what it was for me. And I couldn't keep doing it. I couldn't keep, and I didn't want to spend years with a counselor. I'm a big proponent of therapy, of counseling. It definitely has its place, and it's a wonderful tool. And I recognized I got to a point where I needed something different. And that would be what I would say to tip anyone who's wondering over the fence is, how long do you want to suffer? And do you really want to DIY the deep healing that you you need?
There you go. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time out to have this conversation and to share your experience working with me for the benefit of those watching and maybe who are considering. And if you are watching and considering working with me, I would recommend that you go to coachjamila.com, click on client results, and you can watch my client testimonials. And then you'll also see a button there that says book a call. So when you're ready, schedule that call and you and I can have a conversation one-on-one about what working together would look like. All right. So thank you so much for being here with us, and I will see you next time.